Hi, welcome. This is Jay Earley, and this is the first video for the course, Transforming Your Inner Critic, using IFS and Self-Therapy Journey. In this video, I'm going to talk about how inner critic parts operate and how you can work with them using IFS, which is Internal Family Systems Therapy, and about the 7 types of inner critics. But first, I think I'm going to give you a little introduction to me, and I'm going to use a little PowerPoint presentation for most of this video. So I'm a licensed psychologist in California, residing in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've been practicing psychotherapy since 1975, a long time. I discovered IFS, Internal Family Systems Therapy, in 2002. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. And I've taught courses on IFS and the pattern system and other things to hundreds of people over the years. So, excuse me, IFS, Internal Family Systems Therapy, works with parts, which are like little sub-personalities, little people inside us. IFS is very user-friendly. It's very powerful and effective. I've really learned that by working with my clients using it over the years, just how really good it is. It's non-pathologizing. It doesn't label you in any negative way. It is spiritually oriented. And it's very effective at working with trauma as well as a wide range of other psychological issues. It was created by Richard Schwartz, PhD, and has in their training programs in IFS in many parts of the country and the world. And IFS was recently stated to be effective in helping people with psychological issues as an evidence-based form of psychotherapy by the government agency that does such things. So I've written quite a few books on IFS. The main one is this one, Self-Therapy, which is really a manual for doing IFS, which is intended for, it's actually written for the general public to help people learn how to use IFS to work on yourself, but it's also really useful for therapists. And I'm proud to say that it's sold so far 25,000 copies, even though it's a self-published book, and sales are still going strong. I have developed something called the pattern system, which you can think of as a periodic table for psychology, which is a detailed system for understanding the psychology of personality. It is involved in, we'll be using the pattern system in this course, especially because the 7 types of inner critics are all patterns in the pattern system, and we'll get into that more later. Self-Therapy Journey is a web application, an online program that is designed for psychological exploration and healing, so that you can actually log on to this program and work on various psychological issues that you'd like to change. And this is what we'll actually be using in this course. And Self-Therapy Journey is based on both IFS and the pattern system. And it can be used to work on many different patterns, capacities, and wounds. In this course, we'll be focusing on the inner critic pattern and the various types of inner critics, which are also separate patterns. My passion is to bring IFS to the world because it's such a powerful form of therapy, to bring the pattern system to the world because it's a new and I think unique system for understanding psychology, especially from a therapy or growth perspective. And then I also would really like to reach the large number of people with Self-Therapy Journey, the large number of people who either can't do therapy or don't want to, would prefer to work on their own. So, all right, so that's enough about me. And now let's move on and talk about inner critics. So an inner critic is a part of you that attacks you, judges you, shames you, and makes you feel bad about it yourself. It may doubt you, it probably undermines your self-confidence. It tells you what you should and shouldn't be doing, and even tells you who you should and shouldn't be. And it generally does this in a nasty, hurtful way, which is why we need to work on these parts, because they lower our self-esteem and make it difficult for us to move ahead and do the things we want to do in the world. So when you feel bad about yourself, when you feel depressed, when you feel inadequate, when you feel ashamed or guilty, remember, this is not the truth about you. This is because you are being attacked, most likely, maybe not always, but most likely it's because you're being attacked by an inner critic part of you that is sending you these messages, these internal messages to make you feel bad about yourself and depressed and so on and so on. It's not the truth. Just keep that in mind. It's very helpful. And we'll go a lot more into this as we go along. And it turns out that inner critics in IFS terminology are considered to be protectors, which and in IFS, protectors are parts that are actually trying to either protect us from pain or that actually protect us from underlying pain that's already there in other parts of us, that carry pain usually from our past, usually from childhood, but also to protect us from being hurt or harmed by other people. So inner critics have a positive intent. Now that may seem odd because they actually hurt us, but that is in fact the beautiful thing about this work, is that your inner critic, and actually you may have more than one, so I'll say your inner critics are actually trying to help and protect you, and I'll show you some examples of that as we go along. So even though they may be harming you, their hearts are in the right place, they are trying to help you and protect you. And therefore, using IFS, you can go inside and connect with your inner critic parts, develop a trusting relationship with them, which is the first step toward transforming them. Here's another book, which is even more directly related to this topic. It's called Freedom from the Inner Critic. It was written by me and Bonnie Weiss, who is my wife and partner in this work. And it shows how to transform inner critic parts using IFS. And you'll be learning all the material, or most of the material from this book in this course, but in a different form, actually by using self-therapy training. And this book, again, is, even though it's written for the general public, is also very useful for therapists. Now, in studying inner critics, Bonnie and I have actually identified 7 different types of inner critics. And here they are listed. And I'm going to go into more detail about each one of them. And as I do, I'll also indicate what the usual type of positive intent is for each of these types of critics, which will give you a sense of how your inner critics are actually trying to protect you, even though they're hurting you. So the first type of inner critic is the taskmaster, which pushes you to work very hard. It judges you if it thinks you're not working hard enough. It often tells you you won't be successful because you're lazy or you're stupid or you're inadequate. But it's doing this to try to motivate you to work hard, to be successful, in order to avoid being judged or rejected, or in order to get approval or acceptance. So that's the positive intent for the taskmaster. And it's often polarized with another part of us, the procrastinator, where the taskmaster is trying to get you to do something, and the procrastinator, of course, is wanting to avoid doing that thing. And the taskmaster is transformed by the ease capacity, which is a type of healthy capacity in the pattern system, where you can do your work with ease without having to push yourself. And now another type of inner critic is the perfectionist, that tries to get you to be perfect, which of course is impossible because none of us could be perfect. But again, its positive intent is very similar to the other one. It's trying to avoid you being shamed or judged for not being perfect, or to get you love and approval, because it thinks that if you're perfect enough, maybe you'll get that. But the effect of the perfectionist is it makes it hard to finish tasks because it's never good enough. And sometimes it makes it hard to even get started. And your perfectionist part may praise you if you do something very well. But if not, it can be very harsh on you, and you may be never good enough, or your work may never be good enough for your perfectionist part, so that it ends up always judging you in some cases. Or in other cases, if you do something well enough, it may actually praise you. And the perfectionist is also transformed by the ease capacity. Excuse me. So a third type of inner critic is the inner controller, which tries to keep you from doing destructive things such as eating too much, drinking too much, getting overly angry, or other potentially addictive activities such as sexual addiction, gambling, etc., etc. And now, of course, you'd like to have a part of you that tries to keep you from doing these things, but the inner controller does it in a harsh way. It's often shaming and rigid, and it's transformed by the healthy capacity that we call conscious consumption, where you can do things and consume things in moderation. So the fourth type of inner critic is the underminer, which undermines your self-confidence, tells you that you're no good, you can't do it, trips you up, makes you feel inadequate, makes you feel like you can't do things, because it's afraid of the consequences of your taking risks, or even of your being powerful and visible. And the underminer is transformed by the courage capacity, where you have the courage to take the risk that the underminer is trying to keep you from taking. And a really important one is the destroyer. This is a very primitive critic that tries to crush you. It's often nonverbal. It may even tell you, it tells you that you are fundamentally not okay, that you are deeply flawed, and maybe even that you don't have the right to exist. And it often comes from anger that's turned back towards you because you don't feel like you have the right to be angry toward someone out there, anyone out there. And it sometimes thinks that it's very dangerous to just be alive, and so it tries to crush you to protect you from that danger. And of course, the healthy capacity that transforms the destroyer is the aliveness capacity. The guilt tripper, it makes you feel guilty about something that you've done or something that you repeatedly do, and it's trying to keep you from doing it again. That's its positive intent. But the problem is that it never forgives you. And it just makes you feel terrible about yourself, and no matter what you do to change your behavior or whatever, it will never forgive you. But of course, it's transformed by the forgiveness capacity. And the last one is the conformist. This is a type of inner critic that tries to get you to fit into a fixed idea of who you should or shouldn't be. And this idea often comes from our parents or our subculture. And who it thinks you should be could be almost anything. It might think you should be meek, or on the other hand, it might think you should be really aggressive. It might think you should be intelligent or caring or any number of other things. So it's going to have a particular idea in mind of who you should be. Oh my goodness. Somebody is calling me. Excuse me for that. And if you fit in with what the conformist thinks you should be, then it leaves you alone. But if you don't, it attacks you to try to get you to conform to what it thinks you should be. And it's trying to protect against you being judged or shamed or excluded for not fitting in, or trying to get you approval or caring from other people for fitting in. And the conformist is transformed by the individuality capacity, where you feel you have the right to be yourself. Okay, so this is the end of our first video, and in week 1, and I'll see you again in the large group gathering and the other videos that come out in future weeks.